In 2021, I started streaming in my free time. The thought process was that if I was already playing video games in my time, that I might as well start streaming while I did so. It provided me an opportunity to socialize, improve my presence on the internet as a furry, join in with the VTubing community that looked to be having a lot of fun, both as a furry and someone who doesn't wish to show their face on the internet. In those 2 years of streaming, I've gained a following, some regular viewers, made friends either within Australia or across the globe, and even made a bit of money from this hobby. I've played my backlog, new releases I was invested in trying, even binging an entire franchise I wasn't interested in playing before all of this. While you'll find a few achievements or moments of triumph, you'll probably find equal parts of me failing, frustrated with mechanics, or just overall not vibing to a game. There have been some who questioned whether I enjoyed playing these games and why I kept playing them. After all, I could be comedically criticizing a character's motivations or be really critical about the world building and structure. I don't think I've answered properly then, choosing to set my head down and continue grinding, but after streaming every day in June, either after work or in the afternoon, and now taking a short break from that, the question started to evolve and nag in my brain. Do I still like playing video games? Short answer, yes. Long answer, I wasn't sure at times. There's obvious moments such as upsets in my progression in Dark Souls 2 or the monotony of grind in Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, but I still wanted to play those games. Either to mark them off this made up checklist of games to play to keep your gamer status, or I was just genuinely interested in what the journey was with how the game wanted me to play or how it told its story. I didn't feel like I was too old to play the games I wanted, or too dumb to appreciate how the game was meant to be played. And then I started playing Final Fantasy XVI. I wasn't a heavy follower of the Final Fantasy franchise. I played 15 long before I was streaming, and when I had far more free time in university than my full-time job now, I went into 14 when I started streaming and got invested in the story, as the MMO is a nice little weekly thing to complete. But I didn't play any other Final Fantasies, and seeing advertisement for Final Fantasy 16 and all the chatter about it being a contender for Game of the Year 2023, I was caught up in the hype. I came into the game with some high hopes, and it didn't reach them for me. Clive was refreshing to see as a 30-some-year-old instead of the teenage character we got in Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy 15, but there wasn't really a party to interact with like I remember from Final Fantasy 15, and with the way people talked about Final Fantasy in general, being all about its party of characters. Everyone talked about the combat being something from Devil May Cry, and but I never got that feeling of Devil May Cry. And I was not wishing to turn on any of those like easy mode accessories that would just let the game play itself while I waited for the button prompts in cinematic cutscenes or in the middle of fighting. It didn't help that as I grew frustrated with myself, unable to somehow clue in on this game combat or when it would finally click for me as I progressed through the story, that the rest of the world was excited for the game and had all the enjoyment they wanted from the combat. It got my brain in this, terrible loop of I like good games, but I don't like Final Fantasy 16's offering me so far. Everyone is saying how the combat was awesome and great, so did I not like good games anymore? It was a terrible mindset space to be in. I tried thinking about everything else related to games, and it didn't help that I started to think about all the stuff I didn't like about video games. Things like how the current ecosystem with video games that we have to contend with are things such as always being online or free-to-play games being designed to be free-to-play because they then give it an allowance for battle passes and the item mold to be projected and pushed towards us, and we no longer just have a good game with an artistic vision, we now have to have a game that is marketable and selling to us. And it doesn't help that we get these games always being online, and now instead of capturing us for maybe 12 to 100 hours tops, we now need to have our attention captured for like repeatedly days or weeks at a time. Or the fact that some of our past and current games that we love and cherish came from environments that are absolutely shit to look at. The fact that Crunch, despite the many documented incidents that it didn't do good for the people that work in the company and ruins its product, are still being done today. Halo 2 was responsible for a divorce, as we learn after its release. Cyberpunk 2077 is another more recent example. Or the fact that, over in Activision Blizzard, just deciding to be a fucking frat house and ruining some people's livelihoods and image of this once great vanguard of developer of video games. The only reason we know about these events from Activision Blizzard is the fact that the US government looked at their offices and just sort of said, Yeah, we're not bothered with what happened at your place. We're bothered with how you handled those things at your place. And you think after all this uproar that we would have left Activision in the past as we should have and look to any new developer or publisher and elevate them to become the new vanguards, either from the current AAA or from the indie scene. But instead, they release Overwatch 2 or Diablo 4, and we're right back with them as if none of that mattered. Despite these terrible things I remember about video games, or how they are made, or where their future is dictated by financial gain, I still love the medium. One of my favorite games is Mass Effect or Dragon Age of the sort, where they have the mechanical faults and story beats might raise questions, but God, I still love my boy Code and his autistic like coding, or how we band together to an old evil whose motivations and values are still very much a warning seen today. The story and game is not just about filling in the gaps as to why we cast spells, shoot guns, or go to this location. It's to tell either a personal story or a critical lesson for a people or a group or society. Even with the frustrations that Elden Ring or Dark Souls gave me in their combat style and hands-off approach to telling their story and their world to me, the mechanical stamina-based melee gave me a sense of achievement when I finally defeated whatever opposition was at me. Sometimes even a sense of euphoria as I defeated a boss on the first try because I was actually able to pick up on mechanics they were pushing at me. Multiplayer games like Final Fantasy XIV was a blast for me when I took part in the Praetorium. Everyone agreeing it's their least favorite dungeon, and the fact that you have unskippable cutscenes and means because they have to be story relevant. I joined in. I drank. I laughed with chat and whoever was in my party as we just went run to run from one room to the next. It was absolutely fun, and it didn't have to be this mechanically challenging run, testing my mettle after hours of going through the Realm Reborn questline. The medium of video games, like film or book, has so much it can offer artistically that I'm willing to give up another game and play more. I'm sure there'll be games like Psychonauts 2 or Final Fantasy 16 where I might not get the same feeling as investment as I like and move on to something else, or I object to playing games like Hogwarts Legacy or Diablo 4 because of either combating my fear of missing out by not taking part or simply objecting to it on a moral standing. Though that just means I'll move on to something I do like, or try something outside of my comfort zone and be floored by how someone or a group of someone has an idea for a video game and they were able to make it and I get to play it. So yeah, I still like video games.